Hey, good morning, everybody. Lee Brower here. Welcome to this week's edition of Meaningful Monday. I am grateful to be here, and I am glad to be here. I am grateful for today. I am grateful for this week. I'm grateful for that I have the choice to make this week meaningful. How about you? Two words: darkness, light. When you think of those two words, which one reminds you most of leadership? Can I share two stories about leadership today? Two stories about leadership, not about somebody that has stripes on their shoulders, not about somebody that has the title of leader. But listen carefully to these two stories. One is that I shared with you probably 8 years ago. I've shared with some of you privately, but probably 8 years ago I shared this story because it was shortly after my mom passed away and we were at her funeral. My niece, Cassie, gave a beautiful talk. And in that talk, she talked about a moment. We call it a whipped cream moment. Some of you will remember it just by its name. And if you recall, she was getting into things she shouldn't be getting into, was a little cranky. And Grammy called her over and said, "Cassie, come here." So Cassie comes over there, and Grammy opens up the refrigerator, takes out a can of whipping cream, and says, "Open up your mouth." So Cassie opens up her mouth. In she squirts the whipped cream. Cassie gets a big smile on her face. And Grammy says, my mom says, "Cassie, it just takes a little bit of sweetness to get rid of that bitterness." So how much does it take to get rid of, how much light does it take to get rid of darkness? Just a spark. Just a spark. And you know, we shared that story. Shortly thereafter I shared it, I got a call. Got a text actually from somebody, a dear friend, whose wife had passed away, and he was managing his 3 kids. And they were getting a little bit of a scuffle. And he had gone out and bought whipped cream because of my mom's story. And he came back, he texted me and said, "I want to thank your mom." He said, "I want to thank your mom," because they were kind of scuffling. And I called the kids over there, got the whipped cream out of the refrigerator, said, "Open up your mouth." Told them the story, just needs a little bit of sweetness to get rid of that bitterness. Their older brother comes walking out and goes, "Hey, what do I got to do to get some of this?" Well, just this morning, I get a text from a dear friend, colleague, teammate, somebody that I coached for years. He said, "I want to thank you for the whipped cream story." And he says, "Ripples continue." And he talked a story about his daughter. And she was going through a similar kind of a thing. She's a cute little young, and he walked over and he said, "Open up your mouth," squirted the whipped cream in. She smiled, set her up for the day. You see, leaders have the ability to influence behavior through their own behavior. Leadership is not an event, though. It's an accumulation of events. It's an accumulation of events. It's being interested, not just interesting. So let me tell you another story that happened in our neighborhood just a couple of weeks ago. My wife Lori was listening to a lady share her experience. She's a widow of about a year or so. And she was having somebody come over and clean their house. It was a young Spanish American young man that spoke broken English. But came in and did some repairs in her home, and he left with a smile. But he called her back shortly thereafter, which kind of made her a little bit hesitant. And he said, "Can I come back and see you? Can I bring my wife over to meet you?" So she hesitantly said, "Yes, of course." So the next thing you know, the doorbell's ringing. He's standing at the door with his, not only with his wife, but with his children and his mother. And he said, "Ma'am, when I was here, I noticed that you looked like you were a little bit sad and you needed something to pick you up. And so I brought my whole family over to come in and give you a hug." And his mom stepped up right away and said, "Can I give you a hug?" And she said afterwards, "How did they know that I was in need of a hug?" You see, this young man, you would never suspect him to be a leader, but leaders do the things that other people won't do. They see things that we don't see. You are a leader if you ask someone how they are doing and you actually listen for the answer. How's your day going? And you actually listen for the answer. You know, it takes just a little bit of light. We are all leaders. We are called to be leaders. We need more leaders today than ever before. So, what can I do today to shine a little bit of light in somebody else's life today? Would that be a good question for each of us to ask each morning? Would that be a great question? Kind of piggybacks on the question we talked about last time. What's the one thing I can do today? What's the one choice I can make today that my future self will say thank you? How can I be the light to somebody? Can I be the answer to somebody's prayer today? If we're walking out with our radar set to see things that we normally wouldn't see, that's what leaders do. Be a leader. Have a meaningful week. I do look forward to talking to you next week. Bye-bye.